Man, now I've been around for a while now, and I'm like my age can come out by the fact that I even still remember this shit, bring it up at all. But I also have an uncanny memory, and that's kind of the problem in a lot of ways with my life. Like some of this shit, I just wish I could scrub from my mind and fucking forget entirely. But I went and I told my sister about the whole thing and my reaction to the whole, people are still making money off the Johnny Depp Amber Heard story, and she was like, "Isn't she gonna countersue an appeal, you know, and this whole thing?" And I'm like, I don't really care. I mean, come on, she's unlikely to prevail even if she does go up against him at that point. It's not a big thing that's worth talking about anymore. It's like basically I would think that we should just put this on the back burner until we actually get some actual news about the fucking matter, about, how that particular countersuit actually goes. Like, even like talk about something else in the meantime while we wait for that sort of thing going on. And YouTube just isn't doing that. It just wants to constantly bash on Amber Heard, and it's like, I'm willing to admit that I perceive her as the villain in this whole story, but it's just, it's unnecessary at this point, and it's just old and played out now. It's stale drama. It doesn't even have like a freshness to it that really should be attracting millions of views in the first place. And like my sister was just like, everything I know about this fucking case, I know against my will. And it made me think, like, in response to her, like, yeah, I wish it's too bad that there are statutes of limitation, because I'd really like to see kind of star myself for emotionally scarring a child by and planting in my brain as a minor mental images of Bill Clinton getting his dick sucked by Monica Lewinsky. Like, I didn't need to know any of that. I didn't want to know any of that, and I want at least my $7 for the kind of Star report and investigation back. Like, because that we had to contribute as taxpayers to fund this godforsaken investigation into what the president did. I mean, do I need to know? No, I don't, and neither does anybody else, for that matter. And besides which, it wasn't even important. Like back then, Bill Clinton did a pretty good job of getting the economy back on track, and gas prices were like under $1 and everything. And now, like, look at it. Look at it. The next guy that comes in, skyrockets and starts a bunch of drama in the fucking Middle East. Like, he made like. I mean, like when Bush came in, he made us long for the days of Clinton in a huge fucking way. Like, it was just wow. Like, for all the damage that he ended up doing. And I think, like, the worst part about that memory within me, thinking back to the period of the Bush administration that has just like stuck with me in a way that I just have not been able to let go of, is just, this country got drowned in a wave of patriotic bullshit, and it made me think back to how all of the genocide and like mass murders that took place during the 20th century were largely inspired by nationalistic fervor that had been like kicked up and ginned up to the extreme. And I don't think what the United States was going through back then could be appropriately referred to as patriotism. It was nationalism as a more appropriate terminology for it. I mean, we had our patriotism questioned because of the idea that we were willing to criticize the president during a time of war. We were told that we didn't have the right to dissent, that we should, if we really loved our country, we would get behind the president even during an unnecessary boondoggle in the Middle East that never really needed to take place and never really did keep us safer or do anything for us. And as soldiers in America died, and it was like, support the troops, send them home. You know, this whole thing is a fucking waste. It didn't need to happen, and then a secretarian, war broke out underneath us, and it's like, what the fuck did we expect was going to happen when we started dicking around? Like, I don't know. I mean, you can't just push democracy as a principle on everybody. Like, some countries it will work with, and others it won't. The culture over there is such a very different culture than our own. It's just not well suited to be a democracy, especially because, in Iraq, like, look at the population. Like, if you look at it, you can see that there's a huge population of like Shia Muslims there, but in the broader Middle East, there's a majority of Sunni Muslims, but that prevailing wind is like the exact opposite in that one like narrow landmass that you would call Iraq, as a country. Like its border within its borders, the Shia are the majority, and that's the total opposite of what it is everywhere else. And the Sunnis had been in control of the government up until we overthrew them. And then, they inflicted a lot of the same oppression that the Sunnis had given the Shia for that whole time on the Sunni minority in the country. It was like, the whole thing was just not temperamentally suited to be a democracy, and now we've put a very dysfunctional one in and installed it over there. I mean, Bush was selling pipe dreams. He was selling an unrealistic, bill of goods. And I mean, I struggle, with this one because it's like, everybody was like, you're not a patriot if you don't, support the president during a time of war. And it was like I don't hate my country. I hate the guy that's in the fucking White House. Like, there's a total difference. Like, I don't get why you would confuse the two things. It's just a silly and stupid expectation to put me through. Like, I mean, my feelings about America can be complicated at times. I think the American people are often wrong about a lot of things. I mean, I try not to be. I try to be as informed as possible and not, stomach and gobble up a lot of disinfo and misinfo like pigs to the trough, like a lot of our people do. I mean, a lot of our people are just wanting to be lied to. I mean, if you want to know why I think that, what my justification for that statement is, I mean, go look at the Fox News audience. Like, look at when Biden actually won in Arizona. Like, they went over, and when Fox News tried to report the truth, but they went over to, OANN, like these people didn't want the truth. They wanted to hear, their Furor Trump had won, you know. That was just the way that it was going down. I mean, they view him as some kind of god emperor, and so that, when he didn't actually prevail, they basically thought it resorted to conspiratorial thinking, and it was all clearly bullshit. But you can't convince them of that because they're such blockheaded idiots. But I mean, that's a good chunk of the country for you right there that thinks that way and has a problem. And I mean, I'm not really like ultimately like I don't I don't hate my country. I just I don't agree with a lot of its politics. There's a and those two things are very very different than each other. Like I don't have to hate America to think that it should embrace a different brand of politics. That's just not really the same positions ultimately. And so I it's a bunch of crap that they're accusing us of. But no, I was not an ally of the Bush administration. Even back during 9/11, my perception of the shrub was that he was a bit of an idiot and the wrong guy to be in. There was a bad thing that he was the guy that was in the White House when the shit hit the fan, because now we have an idiot in chief in charge of the country. I mean, I literally felt that way on September 11th, 2001. I was one of the minority that never supported the Bush administration. I'm one of those people. I mean, I kind of try to stay in the shadows because of it, because of the fact that happens to be true. Like, I don't necessarily want to be seen and noticed by a lot of people. But yeah, at no point was I ever supportive for the president. You know, I thought that an idiot got put in office. I thought that he bolstered on anti-intellectual credentials. He came in trying to make people feel a little too comfortable about being idiots. I don't think that we should coddle idiocy. I don't think ignorance should be celebrated. You know, and I mean that's just my individual position, but I mean it's the way that I feel. So the Bush administration, it just made people feel too comfortable with being stupid, and really it should have done the exact opposite. People shouldn't be comfortable with being idiots. It should make them uncomfortable. It's a good thing that it does. Because the thing about ignorance is that it's correctable. That's the simple truth. It's able to be resolved. People can be taught, they can be educated. They can be educated out of ignorance. It's just that you have to be aware of your own ignorance and without reminders of it and without things that remind us of how much we don't know. I mean, what ends up happening? People just labor with the delusion that they do know, and that's a problem. People should be aware of it when they've got a blind spot intellectually. And I mean that's authentically how I feel about all of it. And um, when Bush was in office, I was not a fan of the shrub at any point. It wasn't. I wasn't. I felt that I would not be put off by a president that was actually smarter than me, and I wanted one. To be honest with you, and that's how I felt. I wanted to feel stupid in the president's company. I never felt stupid in Bush's company ever. You know, and in the company of the people that followed him and were fans of him, he never gave me that luxury to ever feel that way about the whole thing. And so it was just, we got this idiot in the White House who may occasionally read a book or two, but he's still not all that bright. So I will say about Bush that just because he reads books doesn't mean he's a fucking genius. It's just the reality of the shrub as a president. He got in a lot of trouble too when he was in Texas. He got went through a DUI and everything else, and it could be argued that he's a bit of a reckless person, you know, to a huge extent, like a reckless and irresponsible person who never should have been given the keys to the White House in the first place. And it's unfortunate that we did and suffered through that, 8-year span of his terrible presidency, just awful, uniquely. And I felt very strongly. I had strong opinions about the flag waving bullshit that was taking place around me. It made me very highly uncomfortable, and it's a part of my own trauma. It's intense, and it's been difficult to let go of it to a huge extent. But yeah, you know, um, looking back at the Kenneth Lay, investigation and everything that Republicans in Congress were doing, I mean, it's unfortunate because, they traumatized a child who really didn't need to know all those fucking details and didn't need to know anything about it, and neither did you. My fellow American. If you think you did, no, you did not. None of us needed to know any of that stuff, and it really kind of drives me up the wall that people are like, "Well, the president lied," and it's like, yeah, he lied about a question that nobody really should have been asking him in the first place. That whole investigation never should have happened. And the worst part about that investigation is that there were residual effects of it, were that this whole nation had to learn about what happened in exquisite detail.